Welcome to the WOVA Circle, real talk on fertility, wellness, and trying to conceive. I'm Gabby Paychev, founder of WOVA Health and fertility educator. This podcast is your community space for navigating the path to parenthood with evidence-based insights, authentic conversations, and genuine support. I'm dedicated to being here with you through every part of your journey. I am very grateful to have Dr. Aimee with us today. Dr. Aimee is a Harvard-trained reproductive endocrinologist and one of the most well-known fertility specialists in the United States. She's also the host of the Egg Whisperer show, where she brings together experts, doctors, researchers, a wide range of specialists across fertility, nutrition, lifestyle, environment, reproductive, and overall health. What stood out to me about her work is that she doesn't just approach fertility from a purely medical angle. She believes that we need to look at fertility from a whole body perspective. And what happens in the body and in the mind, it impacts fertility. Dr. Aimee, welcome.
Yay! Thank you for having me. I love talking to you. It's so nice to see you again.
Yeah, me too. Well, first of all, I came across you while I was struggling to conceive, and my first IVF cycle failed, and I was in the middle of a second IVF cycle, and I was doing so much research, and I was talking to different doctors across the world, and I came across your podcast. And I absolutely love it because the experts you interview are not only the typical doctors in the traditional medicine, but you also touch on functional medicine. And you, not many people probably know, you have also masters in public health. So you do understand that nutrition and lifestyle and environment definitely matter. And I was very impressed, and I got in touch with you, and that consultation call was the best
Aw,
experience. Learned so much from you. And you played a big part in my third IVF cycle. So I always say to people that you are one of the most amazing doctors I've met. And
thank
thank
you.
you so much for the work you do.
Aw, thank you. I love doing it. And I just love seeing you be a mother and like raising your child. Like watching you guys on social media is the most fun for me.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing 3-year-old.
Yes.
Time flies. Can you talk about a little bit about your story? What really inspired you to go into reproductive endocrinology?
I mean, I think I always wanted to be an OBGYN since the age of 3. So my father is an OBGYN. He retired in 2020. My grandfather was an OBGYN and he owned a big hospital. And he was very well known, a very well known obstetrician. And so I just kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. And then when I was around 12 years old, my mom started having many miscarriages. And I said, that's just not right. I need to fix that because she's a very strong woman. She never cries. And I would listen to her howling in the middle of the night. And so I asked my dad, I said, what are we going to do about this? And, what kind of doctor fixes this? And he told me, well, it's called reproductive endocrinology and infertility. And I said, well, that's what I want to do. And I literally, from that point on, dedicated my life to doing research every summer. In college, I would fly to Boston and work at the Recurrent Miscarriage Center at Harvard. And I got grants and I published papers. And then I went to med school knowing that that's what I wanted to do. And the rest is history. And here I am just, trying to bring more love into the world and solve problems that sometimes people feel are unsolvable. But when they meet me, I, do my best to try and break things down in a way that's understandable and it feels doable so that they're not so overwhelmed. Because what I tell people is fertility medicine is not rocket science, right? It just isn't. But I feel like as a medical system, we're moving further and further away from talking to patients. And everyone's talking about the newest AI platform. We can do AI this and this app and that app. And patients might want an emotional well-being app and they might want, an app to, get some levels checked. But at the end of the day, people really just want to talk to someone who will listen to them and understand them. And I'm hoping that even if someone can't be my patient, by reading the articles that I read, listening to the podcasts, like listening to us talk today, people will feel a little less stressed about their journey.
Thank you for sharing that personal story. And I can see why the work you do today matters so much to you. And you're right, and we're going to talk about AI a little later today as well. But there's so much confusion. As much as it's helpful, sometimes it's a little more overwhelming and it adds more confusion. And you're right, like we need the personal touch and the personal conversation. When I struggled with fertility, I met with different doctors, and you definitely stood out because you were so empathetic, and you were very positive, realistic but positive. So, I mean, thank you. I know
No,
that you're bringing so much hope with so many people around the States and probably even around the world.
thank you.
So I'm curious, has your thinking changed since you started? When you graduated, Dr. Aimee is still in the early career versus the experienced Dr. Aimee today. What has changed in your perspective of how you approach fertility?
I mean, my approach is pretty much the same in terms of getting to a root cause and giving patients a diagnosis and fixing what we can fix so that the prognosis is as good as possible before they start treatment. That's always been how I've approached fertility care. What's changed is I started my practice when I was 32 in 2008, and now I'm 50. So at 32, I would look at my 40-year-old patients, and because you're brainwashed as a fertility doctor into thinking that no one can get pregnant over 40. And so I would look at my 40-year-old patients like, they must be crazy. Like, what are they thinking that they can get pregnant at 40? Now that I'm 50, I look at my 40-year-olds, I'm like, you're young, let's do this. Like, these are all the things that you're going to do. This is what you're going to take. And most of my patients are over the age of 42 now. I did an egg retrieval on a 49-year-old this morning. And it's, some people have issue with that. And they're like, why would you do that? You're giving her false hope. And I'm like, well, the chance is not zero. I mean, she goes in understanding that she has no expectation it's going to work, but we would never tell a man that we won't help him at 49. So why can't we give a woman at least one chance? So that's kind of how things have changed for me, is that when I started my practice, the average patient in my practice was about 32, then I went to 37, then 42, and I'm seeing more patients between 45 and 50 who want to use their own eggs more than ever. I have a patient who's 57 years old, pregnant right now, with donor egg. She's given me permission to share this publicly with people. So, I would say that technology has changed. The tools we have, I have more tools than ever. I think there are patients that I wish that I could see now that I couldn't help, let's say 10 years ago. But it's a very exciting time to be a fertility doctor.
Great. And I'm glad that things are evolving and that we can help more people, even when they're older, to still grow their family.
Yeah.
Now, talking about IVF, what do you wish more patients understood before starting IVF?
Yeah, I think they should understand what the limitations are and what the expectations are for their age, their fertility levels. They should go in knowing what their diagnosis is. I have all sorts of acronyms. I have the egg whisper diet. That's my 4-step process that patients should go through when they're going through IVF. The D is diagnosis, know why you're doing IVF. And then the I part's preparing for IVF and doing IVF. And the E part is endometrial testing. Make sure your uterus has all the things have been ruled out before you do the last stage, which is the transfer. So I think that sometimes people believe the myths that they're told, and people are told things like, oh yeah, when you go through IVF, your eggs will be better and you'll grow more eggs. And I'm dispelling myths all day long. So I think people just need to really educate themselves about what IVF is and what it is not, what it can and cannot do. IVF will not make you a better baby. What IVF does is recruit more eggs, so we have more chances. And the younger you are, the higher the quality of your embryos. And not every single embryo is going to turn into a healthy baby. So people need to remember that. And if you're doing genetic testing is still very ambiguous. It's not a perfect science. So the things that I do every day are dispel those myths. Like, if I do IVF, it's going to work. And if I test an embryo, it's going to be a healthy baby. And I've ruled everything out, including autism and birth defects. That's just not true. So those are some of the things that I wish people knew before they started their journey.
From an emotional perspective, what part of IVF do you feel feels more emotionally draining than people expect when they start?
Yeah, I mean, I think the results really affect people and they don't realize how much it's going to impact them. Because let's say I tell someone, even if I've well prepared them, I say, you start off with 10 follicles and we might end up with 2 embryos. Everyone thinks they're going to be 100%. Oh, I'm going to start with 10 follicles and I'm going to have 10 embryos. And if I'm super stoked at 2, they're going to be disappointed and depressed, but I lost 8. So I try and spin things and say, well, you had to start with 10 to gain 2. That's how you have to think about it, because there's nothing else in life where you're like, I got 100% on the test and I got 2 out of 10, right? But IVF is completely different. So it's hard to kind of learn that way of thinking. It comes with time as you go through IVF, but I think people can face a lot of disappointment if they don't have the right set of expectations going in. And then I have what I call the IVF pyramid that I share with patients that kind of shows what happens along each step of the way. You start off with a certain number of follicles, then that number goes down to the number of mature follicles, then the number of fertilized eggs, the number of blastocysts, the number of euploid blastocysts, and ultimately you get a baby. And it's kind of like an upside down funnel or a pyramid from the bottom all the way to the top. So I think that that's really important for people to know. And if you don't, you get really depressed. You feel misled. Like, why did I start with 5 follicles and not end up with 10? I thought that's what's supposed to happen. And then people get really sad. Obviously, IVF cycles that don't work are extremely distressing. And I think people need more support now than ever, and they should meet with a fertility therapist from the very beginning. Even if an IVF cycle works, patients still describe that they still feel traumatized by everything they went through to even get there. So a lot of times patients wait until things go really badly, and then they reach out and they're like, I think I need help. But I feel like having a fertility team up front is extremely important.
Yeah, you're right. And education is so important. When I even was doing my first IVF, I didn't do any research. I was scared. I think a lot of people are scared. Well, I also thought IVF is a guarantee, but I was also scared to find if it's not, to find otherwise. And then later I realized that no, like education is so important. If I knew so many things ahead of time, I could have optimized my chances, but also had a better journey, not as stressful and emotionally draining. What do you feel is most impactful when it comes to IVF and when it comes to to a good outcome, to having a healthy baby?
The most impactful is, I mean, your age when you're doing it. So the younger you are, that's going to give you the highest chance of having a healthy baby. That's the most impactful. I think a lot of patients come in and they're like, oh, I'm 34. I'm going to do treatment for maybe I'll do 6 IUIs. And if that doesn't work, then I'll do IVF. But they're not necessarily thinking of their second baby when they're making that plan. So I have all these like golden rules or little fertile pearls is what I call them, where I tell people, look, if you're 32 and you're partnered and you want to have at least 2 kids, freeze embryos. Because your age at the time when you're creating embryos is the most important thing. If a single woman came to me at 34, I would say, I want to freeze enough eggs for you to have 2 kids. So let's freeze at least 20. But people forget that when they're partnered. And I think that's why people struggle a lot with what we call secondary infertility. So I think age is the most impactful. And the thing that people can do is obviously be the healthiest version of themselves, starting with being mentally healthy, getting good sleep, eating healthy, emotionally healthy, relationships healthy, exercising, strength training. Like those are all the things that I think are also extremely impactful and things that you can control. A lot of this stuff you can't. You can't control the DNA of your eggs. You can support the egg quality, but at the end of the day, there isn't really much else that you can do outside of that.
I'm curious, when you look at patients who do really well and maybe need just one IVF to have a successful outcome, what drives this besides age?
I mean, a lot of it's age. I mean, and it also depends on how many kids you want. I mean, if let's say you're, 34 years old and you want 4 kids, you probably do need more than one cycle, depending on how many embryos you get in the first cycle. So, I think also having good sperm is really important, having a healthy uterus, making sure that you've addressed things like the microbiome, inflammation from endometriosis, inflammation from adenomyosis, any other anatomic issues like a septum or a uterine polyp before you do a transfer. So that's why I have that 4-step process, right? So aside from just doing IVF, the next thing you want to think about is the endometrium, or the lining of the uterus, and the uterus as a whole before you transfer. You don't want to think of your embryos like a set of dice and you're just kind of rolling the dice and just hoping you're going to get a winning number. We want to be a little bit more thoughtful than that when it comes to embryos.
Sometimes people tend to overfocus on things that don't really make such a impact.
Yeah.
Can you mention a few?
Oh, I absolutely. So patients tell me, I stopped drinking coffee for 3 months. I'm like, why did you do that? Like, coffee is amazing. It's great for your mood. It helps your bowel movements. It gives you energy, especially when you're feeling like a slug during fertility treatments. Who told you that? Or they say things like, oh, I was told I can't get my heart rate up and I can't move my body and I really shouldn't do any exercise because exercise causes inflammation. I'm like, whoever told you that is probably overweight and hates exercise and just wants you to really like them so that they are just giving you an excuse not to move your body. I tell my patients, high impact, high intensity exercise. I want you to feel really good about your body. I want you to be able to run a 10-minute mile. I want you to be able to lift weights so that when this baby comes, you can push that stroller and lift your arms over your head with your baby in your hands without feeling like you're going to die because you're out of breath. Eliminating food groups is something that I hear too, where people say things like, I stopped eating sugar, gluten, and dairy. And I'm like, why? Like, who told you that's a thing? Like, that's not a thing. That doesn't help your fertility. I mean, obviously, if you have celiac sensitivity or gluten sensitivity or allergy, that's different. But, being obsessive over things like that, I don't think is that helpful. I just want people to find joy in their life, do things that are fun, and, stay away from obvious environmental toxins like, cigarette smoking. Everyone knows that. Frequent marijuana use. Everyone knows that. But overall, there are trends now where people do things that they think are going to help their fertility, but they really don't.
I like the examples you mentioned. I think they're driven mostly by that lack of control that you have, and you're trying to find something to do so you feel like you're more in control of the situation. But sometimes it backfires and actually hurts your fertility if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or what you're doing is not really the right thing for you.
Oh, yeah. Patients tell me I was told to stop exercising, so I've gained 20 pounds in the last 3 months. And I'm like,
Not a good thing.
who thought that was a good idea?
When someone is starting an IVF and they feel overwhelmed, what is the first thing they should do?
Figure out why they're feeling overwhelmed. Is it because they're scared and worried that it won't work? Is it because they don't know what's going on and what's happening to their body? So I have this, it's a word, I don't think I've invented it, but it's a combination of excited and nervous, because so many people are just really nervous about being an IVF patient, but I try and get them to say I'm actually excitus. A little bit of excitement, a little bit of nervousness, and you package it together. Because when you do something for the first time, of course you're going to be nervous, you're going to be scared, but you're also excited. And you're excited about the possibility that it actually could work. So I try and get people to think and remember that as they're going through it. And I have all sorts of things that I try and help people with, like meditations. I share with them my Spotify anxiety and stress relief channel. I have a love for EDM music that I share with my patients. We even play EDM in my IVF lab and in the procedure room. So I think finding things that bring you joy, that will reduce your stress. And if you identify what's causing you stress, the time to fix it isn't after you've created embryos. So let's say it's stress over your relationship and you actually think that maybe you should not be making embryos with this guy that you're making embryos with. That's going to be a really stressful IVF cycle. So listen to your heart, listen to your gut, take time. Don't rush into a cycle unless you feel very prepared, and all things are peaceful as much as possible in your life.
Love it. I love your sense of humor and how you put a positive spin to things, because
Yeah.
when you are going through this journey, sometimes you become so serious and you really lose your identity, you lose your sense of self, you lose your interest in hobbies and relationships. And it's nice to have an expert to actually kind of bring you back to life, bring you more
Right.
positivity and be
Yeah.
more hopeful. And it's okay to have some humor about these things, and we should not be stopping life. Like we
Yes,
should
that is
continue
true.
living our life.
Yes.
How much of what we talked about you feel is controllable versus biology?
I mean, it's all biology, and then it's your behaviors influence your biology. So if you're not sleeping well, that's going to create inflammation, high cortisol, increase in insulin resistance. If you're not eating healthy, that's also going to do a lot of just the same things that I just shared with you. If you're depressed and anxious, you're going to be miserable going through the cycle, and you're also going to have a much higher risk of postpartum depression. So you want to address those things early on. I tell patients, if you're even like the tiniest bit depressed, like join a support group, get a therapist, get a group, get your squad, get your
Yeah.
cheer squad, get them all around you. So anytime you need someone, know who has that life raft for you, and make sure that you can jump on that raft whenever you need them, and they'll pull you to shore and help you out.
So you talk about nutrition and lifestyle, sleep quality, exercise. Where do you see whole body health fitting into fertility care today? I think things have changed quite a bit over time.
Well, everyone knows that it helps, but I don't think people talk about it enough. I think doctors just assume patients know how to help themselves and know what resources are out there without actually guiding them. So I prescribe a lot of GLP-1s in my practice. So about 25% of my patients are on a medication like Zepbound, for example. I think they are very effective drugs in terms of helping patients reduce inflammation, stop the food noise. A lot of patients share with me that they gain like 10 to even 40 pounds on their fertility journey, and that really impacts their self-esteem, their sex drive. So I don't think doctors talk about these things enough. And, programs like yours obviously are really important to fill that gap.
Thank you. How do you help patients prioritize without adding more pressure? Where do you find the balance between enough information versus too much information?
Well, it depends on how much, like, it just depends on like, if you kind of think about like, what can I fix first? What would be the easiest thing to fix? Then we do that. And I just share the things that I do with patients. So I don't go to the gym. I hate watching people exercise. I think it's weird. I don't like staring at myself in the mirror. I hate mirrors. I don't like looking in the mirror and exercise and watching other people exercise at the same time. Like, who came up with that idea? Like, ew. I don't want to see people like sweating and they're like saggy balls and guys running around. No, thank you. So I tell patients, in my office, I have weights right next to my desk. In between patients, I just, I do curls. I do
Great.
squats as I'm waiting in front of the door as a patient's getting undressed. Like, it can take a patient a minute to get undressed. Well, that's a minute of squats right there. Or do a wall, what is it called? A wall squat. And I'll compete with my medical assistant and see who will give up first. I usually lose because they're like 30 years younger than me. I run around the office like a total freak. So like to get my steps in, because again, like I already told you, I hate going to the gym and I work 20 hours a day. I'll literally jog around the office just to get my steps. So like if I can do it with the schedule that I have, anyone can do it. Like the patient the other day said, well, I have back pain, so I can't exercise. And I've just gained 40 pounds. And I'm like, that's not an excuse. I'm like, do you have arms? And I try and be, I told her she could call me a bitch after this conversation. I'm like, you can call me a bitch. Do you have arms? She's like, yes. I'm like, when you move your arms, does it hurt your back? She goes, no. I'm like, well, then start moving your arms. I'm like, let's do some arm exercises that you don't have an excuse. I have a cousin who's in a wheelchair. He's paralyzed from the waist down, and he exercises every single day. I'm like, you have no excuse.
Yep.
So it's a little bit of tough love with a little bit of humor, but I think, patients know where I'm coming from when I talk to them like that. It's a place of love because I really, truly, deeply care about everyone and I want everyone to be successful. But at the same time, I want whatever I do for them to work. I don't want it to not work and then have these conversations about what could we have done differently. The time to do the work is now before you put in a precious embryo.
Yeah, you're right. We do love to make excuses. It's much easier, let's say, to take a supplement or a medication versus really taking a 3-month approach, for example,
I
including
love watching people on
nutrition.
Instagram exercise. I mean, some of the things they do are insane, but yes, it's a lot
Yeah,
easier than
yeah.
doing the work yourself.
So there are situations when IVF doesn't work. There are certain times when IVF can really solve every single problem. Now, in those situations, what is the best approach and what explanations usually make sense?
So most of the time it's egg quality, probably about 80% of the time. Where the egg quality issue is coming from can be a combination of age, genetics, and environment. So age is obviously a factor, but genetics too. I mean, some people are born with genes that make their eggs less viable. And then some people grew up in an environment where their eggs are not going to be as viable when they're ready to have a baby compared to if they were to have started a lot earlier. Environmental things could be extreme air pollution, being exposed to secondhand smoke. I'll never forget a patient I had. Her parents smoked. Her mom even smoked when she was pregnant with her. Her mom and dad smoked in the car, in the house around her. She didn't leave the home until she was 18. She went into early menopause. And she's like, how did this happen? I'm like, it was the environment. It was all that cigarette smoke. You basically were surrounded by carcinogens, by
Yeah.
environmental toxins, even before you were born, So there are certain things that we can point to. And then if you just look at the environment in general, we're being poisoned from the time we're even an egg cell in our mother's ovary with all the plastics that are in the follicular fluid. So I feel like human beings are going to be wiped out soon. Everything I say, every prediction that I have always comes true unless we really figure out a way to create eggs and sperm from other cells than from cells in the embryo. We're not talking about in my lifetime, but I feel like the day is going to come and we're going to be really sorry we didn't pay attention to this sooner. I've been warning about this ever since I started having a platform to talk about it. But, people are starting to listen. One of my predictions was that IVF is going to be free and the government was going to pay for it. We're getting closer, but I think if we don't do it immediately, things are going to be really bad for us as a society.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully, hopefully, in the near future, we're going to see more changes in the right direction. Now, you mentioned 80% of the cases when an IVF fails is due to egg quality, poor egg quality. Did you say 80%?
Well,
How do you know?
I would say the reason why most IVF cycles fail is because the embryo isn't strong enough or it's not genetically normal. And the reason why an embryo doesn't have the viability that's high enough to implant or be genetically normal is mostly egg driven. It doesn't mean that sperm does not impact IVF outcomes. It certainly does, especially if the DNA fragmentation is elevated or the paternal age is over 50. So if a man is over 50, it's highly likely that there is going to be a higher risk of having a chromosomally abnormal embryo because of his age. So I encourage all guys to freeze sperm by the time they're 25, just like all women should freeze eggs. At least think about it by the time they're 25 so that we don't have the problems that I predict that we're going to have in 1 to 2 generations to come. Because if my patients are 45 having babies right now, they're shacking up with guys in their 50s. And we know that increases risk of autism in offspring. So we're going to see an epidemic of autism, I predict, with more and more women having kids over the age of 40.
How can you tell that it is mainly an egg quality issue versus a sperm quality issue?
Just from biology. We just know the biology of an egg. So if you take an egg and create an embryo with it that's 25 years old, it's almost always going to be genetically normal. If you take an egg from a 45-year-old and create an embryo and genetically test it, it has a 2% chance of being genetically normal. So that's how we know.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, good to know.
Yeah.
What do you think we still don't understand about implantation?
I think there's a lot of genetic stuff we don't know. We don't understand how to study any immune response that happens between the embryo and the uterus. So I wish we had more tests along those lines that were actually more evidence-based. I mean, there are companies that I work with like Pregmune. I think their test is good. Fertilisis offers some tests. iGenomics offers some tests, not looking at immune dysfunction between the embryo and uterus, but other things like the microbiome, uterine pathogens, receptivity, and inflammation from silent endometriosis. But I feel like if we can know more about what happens between genes in the uterus and genes in the embryo and how they interact, and if there is some sort of incompatibility, how to fix it so that an embryo has a higher chance of implanting, that would be pretty remarkable.
One thing I really appreciated when I was building WOVA, and I mentioned my mission and the whole concept of WOVA, is that you liked the idea and you were one of the first specialists who were on board and wanted to support and be part of the network. What makes you open to emerging or early stage models in fertility care?
Yeah, I mean, not all of them are going to be winners. And I always tell people, I'm like, you're not going to be able to, scale this. There are a lot of things that have come my way. I just think about what problem a company is trying to solve. Is there something else that's similar to this, that's trying to do the same thing that could be better? I look at the cost, like what is the financial cost? And it's not just that, but the time that a patient will have to spend doing this and what the benefit will be for them. And then what is the company trying to get out of it as well? There's some companies that act like they're trying to do something just because, they're trying to help the world, but in the end, they're selling all the patient's data. Those are the kinds of things that get me really upset when people are taken advantage of. But for the most part, I actually seek out companies. So I have Google alerts for everything fertility related. So I get a lot of press releases. So if something is really interesting to me, I'll reach out to a company and see if, I can learn about what they're doing. If there's some way that what they're doing could help my patients, I really want to start learning about it and seeing if I can offer it to my patients as soon as possible.
That's amazing. Now, I do want to talk about this more, but let's also talk about AI. What makes you most excited about AI?
AI will help me reach more people because it makes me more efficient as a person. So I use AI in my practice. Every interaction I have with my patient, I summarize every single note. I use AI to record the transcription or to record our voice. Patients are aware of this on our new patient call. And I can just turn that into a nice summary. I add links and research articles. Before AI, I would actually type it all out myself. It'd take me an hour to type it out. I had a scribe that worked for me. She got paid hourly to type everything that I said. I don't have to have that anymore. So basically, I can serve more people. I can provide the same level of care while serving more people because I never wanted to stop doing what I did. So anytime a patient sees me, I do all my own ultrasound, so I describe what I'm seeing. I give them their images. Then I send them a summary of what we discussed. Because oftentimes patients come in scared and afraid. They don't know what's going on, even though I do my best to educate them. And then they leave and they forget everything that I said. So I do a lot of education, a lot of, I'll call it information reinforcement through verbalizing, emailing, and then also printing out things and handing it to them. So that's what AI has allowed me to do from an operation standpoint, be more efficient. From a lab standpoint, I think we're going to see more efficiencies in the IVF lab with AI. And, it's just the beginning.
Yeah. Where do you think it's overhyped?
I think right now it's overhyped in the sense that it's been a couple years now that we're being told that like AI can help us pick a better embryo for patients to transfer and it will increase pregnancy rates. And I don't see that as a reality quite yet, but I'm hoping that day will come.
That would be really, really good if we don't have to do a biopsy and do an actual testing doing that way, but maybe use an AI tool.
Right.
Are there any other areas in fertility care where you think AI can really help?
Sperm selection, definitely. I think AI can help with, maybe even, determining egg quality for egg freezing patients. Like there already is a company, I think it's called Violet, where they use AI to grade eggs and give patients a sense as to how successful they're going to be with those eggs in the future. I think you probably have heard so many stories of patients who've gone back to thaw their eggs and they got far less embryos or no embryos at all after they try and create embryos. So I think AI will help us with that.
Can we talk about your book? I
Yes.
pre-ordered a copy. I
Thank
cannot
you.
wait. Yeah, I cannot wait to read it. Can you share maybe some of the top things that you discuss in your book
Oh,
and why people
absolutely.
should
Yeah. I
get
mean,
it?
basically, it's right here. Know what to ask, how to test, and give yourself every chance at getting pregnant. I just want people to have a no regret plan. I want people to know how I think about fertility. I mean, I can't teach people how to be a fertility doctor in a book, but I sure try to. And so I think people who read this book will come away with lots of the things that I educate patients about. So it's kind of like seeing me without seeing me.
Beautiful. What made you decide that this is the right time to write the book?
I've been blogging since 2008. I've probably written over 2,000 articles on my website. So anyone who wants to read them, you just go to draimee.org/blog. And I've been approached by many agents, many publishers. But this one publisher, her name was Aimee. And she's like, I'm Aimee, you're Aimee. And I'm like, okay, you sold me at Aimee.
Meant to be.
And she was just super, like, because of how much I do in a day, and patient care is the most important to me. That's all I care about. I don't care about anything else. I don't care about social media. I don't care about how many likes I get or videos get watched. I only care about the patients that I help. That is it. And so, I think for me, this book is just another way for me to help more people. And, I have a great team at Wiley, which is my publishing house. And, I just feel really lucky that someone believed in me. And so I'm really excited for it to come out.
What's the core message you'd like people to get away from the book?
I think the core message is just educate yourself before you start your fertility journey. And then unless you know what questions to ask, because people say so much, like, I thought I knew everything, but I didn't even know that this was a question that I needed to know to ask. So I think that's, one of the most important takeaways from the book.
It sounds like this book might be not just good for patients, but also for other practitioners in your field.
Well, that's why I came up with Tushy method, because I want every OBGYN to know it, right? So get your tubes, uterus, sperm, hormones, your genetics, get it checked. And OBGYN should just be doing that as part of preventive care. Like a patient goes in for a pap smear, talk to them about, hey, let's check your hormones. Are you thinking about having a baby? Oh, you had chlamydia 2 years ago. Let's make sure you've checked your tubes before you start your fertility journey. Oh, your husband's on testosterone? Oh, that's not good. Let's get a sperm check. Like, this stuff is not rocket science. It's so easy to do.
I will share a link to the book so people can get it, because I personally cannot wait to read it. So
Thank you.
I'm sure it's amazing. You have so much experience and knowledge, and
Yeah.
I look forward to reading it.
Thanks.
So just a couple final questions. What gives you the most hope in fertility medicine right now?
What gives me the most hope is that people are still showing up having babies. I mean, with how ugly this world is right now, you would think people would be like, peace out. Like, there's no reason to bring more children into this world. That's what gives me hope. It does.
Good.
There are still loving people out there that want to have children. Because I think a lot of people just feel really discouraged about the state of the world with all the wars, what's going on with politics. And that gives me a lot of hope. And that's what keeps me going. Because I am on a mission to make sure that as many people can become a parent as long as I'm in this world. And that's really important to me.
And these children will grow up and change the world.
Yes. I want them all to be fertility doctors. Anytime a patient brings a baby in, I'm like, you're going to come intern with me. Call me when you're in high school. We'll set up your summer plans.
If you could change one thing about fertility care, what would that be?
It should be free for everybody.
I love it.
That's
Thank you,
what I
Dr.
would
Aimee.
change. You're welcome. It should be free for everybody. That's what I would want to do. I want, whoever's in power to say, Aimee, like, do your thing, help as many people as you can. We will fund it. Just like help as many people have a baby as you can while you're on this earth. That would be like a dream for me. And then patients wouldn't have to have the financial stress that they have. I mean, so many people don't have children because of the financial strain, and that kills me.